Welcome back to Kings of the North. Doug Lesmerises and Bill Landis. Recorded, not live today on this Memorial Day. We hope you maybe have a chance to spend some time with friends and family, celebrate the heroes of America. But Landis, we wanted to give people a little Northern CFB on this Monday.
Yeah, we don't want to skip it, but we also didn't want to make people, have to sit there and experience it live and ruin their social agendas on a lovely holiday.
Yeah. Mommy, it's time for the picnic. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You have to wait until either 1:30 or 1:56, depending on how long Doug won't shut up, and then we can have the picnic. We don't want to do that to our audience, right?
No, not today. But other days, sure, just not today.
We do this. So this show is going to be a little bit questions, comments. We ask people like, how can we make the show better? We have a couple comments along those lines. And sort of a noon football discussion, because I talked about that a lot last week when you weren't here, and we certainly got some responses about playing games at noon. What do fan bases want, particularly Ohio State and this Texas game that feels like it's going to be a big noon to open the season on August 30th. We're going to start with a couple questions first. We'll be back on Wednesday, normal time, noon, live on YouTube. I think that show is going to be how you go about defending your national championship and what kind of opportunity and chance does Ohio State have to repeat. And we will get back to our KOTN showdowns. There's no showdown today. There was no showdown on Wednesday. I think the Wednesday showdown, Landis, is going to be a banger. Kansas, Rutgers. You ready for that?
I'm ready for it. The world's not ready for it, but I'm ready for it. Who do
you
I
want to be, Kansas or Rutgers? I make you
I'll
decide
be
live on air.
It's closer. It's closer to my East Coast heart, so I'll be Rutgers.
Okay. Also, you and Jalen Daniels have had a very up and down relationship for the past 18 months, so you guys maybe could use a break. I'll take Jalen Daniels mini golfing. You and Greg Schiano can grind some tape, and we'll see where we come out on Wednesday. All right, couple comments and questions off the top on various topics. This is from Darren, and this is one that Darren sent in a little while ago. It's related a little bit to the tiers that we did for the SEC and Big Ten the other day. And I think this is an ongoing, interesting conversation about college football. Big fan of the show. Thank you for the opportunity to allow fans like me a chance to interact. I listened to a few college football podcasts, and one of those right there, Darren's out. I don't even know if we can continue. We want to be your only show. No, that's okay. We'll allow it. And there seems to be a consensus around a few teams being college football blue blood programs, but not all. I was wondering what teams you considered in that category, along with a few other questions I listed below. I hope these aren't dumb. They are not dumb. How would you define a college football blue blood? Who are the North versus South blue bloods? How would you tier rate the programs? We did that in a version of it. Can a program rise up, fall out of blue blood status? And will a non-blue blood program ever win a national title again? Now, this is the kind of thing that you can do a whole show on. We're not going to do a whole show on it. Bill, I just said, you're fine. You don't need to prep for this show. So you didn't know this specific question was coming. I think anymore, blue blood is some combination of tradition, which affects how much it matters to the fans and the university itself. Like how much it matters, I think is a big part of it. And then I think the second part of it in today's world, and maybe it was always the case, is resources. Now, of course, like winning is in there, like consistent winning, but it's how much you matter and the resources you have that allow you to win on a consistent level. So my main thing is tradition / passion. I think tradition can lead to passion in some ways, and resources. What's a blue blood in your mind?
I think it's partly that. I would say tradition for me is a tricky one because there are programs that have had tremendous tradition that have, you got a Nebraska banner over your shoulder, right? Like, of course, at a time, Nebraska was considered a blue blood based on this tradition. I don't think people would say that now. So that's a little bit of a moving target for me. I think resources and winning, like consistent presence, not necessarily like in the national championship conversation, but at the very least, like on the periphery of it. Like if you're just not relevant on a championship level consistently, I think it's hard to call yourself a blue blood, like a current blue blood. So I would lean more toward the actual on field results than I would like history, like recent on field results than I would the history of a program.
I do think the expectations are part of that too. If your fan base is happy with 8 wins in a bowl game, I don't know if you're a blue blood.
I would agree with that. Right. Yeah.
So the question about can a program rise up, fall out? I think there are 2 programs in the modern history that you would center this discussion around the most. One is Clemson, and one is Oregon. And I think then the answer is yes, I think programs can rise up and fall out of blue blood status, because going back to what you said, if you are just a consistent winner who is competing at the top of the sport and in the national championship mix for 10 years, I don't know. I'm not going to hold back from calling you a blue blood, because that probably also, you probably have resources in order to do that. You probably get more resources by doing it. You stir up your fans' passions and expectations, which elevate you. So I think you can rise up and fall out. And then again, like, well, there's a separate part. Do you think you can rise up? Now, Clemson and Oregon examples of it. You think you can? Okay.
Yes.
So if you're not a blue blood, give me the next blue blood. Who are we? Texas Tech. We're on alert for Texas Tech because that guy's not going to be heading the commission now. He was like, I'm going to spend $100 million a year to build Texas Tech's football team because I have an oil rig in my backyard. And then they were like, that's Texas cool. Tech. You can be on the commission. And he was like, that's cool. I will bend the will of the sport to what I want to help Texas Tech. And then they were like, maybe let's not have a commission. And then he's going to be like, okay, now I'm going to be like an evil Marvel villain. And can you imagine if the next Marvel movie was about making Texas Tech a college football blue blood, and that guy with the hand and the fists? And instead, I don't want to ruin it for people. Is it ruin it to say that the guy with the hand killed a third of the earth? Right? That's not. I'm not spoiling anything, am I?
Half of all living things. Yeah.
What if the alternate of that was, Texas Tech is in the playoff for 5 out of 7 years?
That is not a cinematic universe that I want to live in.
I'd rather have the population vanish. And then everybody at Disney World, the kids are like, Mom and Dad, can I get the Texas Tech fist? I'm going to wear the Texas Tech fist for Halloween. We made the semifinals. So you can rise up. Can you fall out?
That you can fall out, yeah. Because if you want to talk about rising up, like I don't know that I would say that Oregon has quite done it yet. I think Oregon is in the process of doing it, right? Like maybe currently on the rise.
Do you have to have a national championship in your program's history to be considered a blue blood?
Probably, yeah. I mean, they played. I know they played for a couple. But yeah, probably. I would say almost definitely. If you're trying to like rise up from a not being one to becoming one, then I would say yes, it's a requirement. Like maybe you should win a national championship first.
Do you think Clemson is definitively one right now?
Yeah, I think it's up for some debate, right? Like they rose up and won those 2 titles in 3 years, but then kind of fell off a little bit. So I don't know. Like, does spiking for a 5-year period make you a blue blood? I'm not entirely convinced of that.
I actually think probably part of the real answer here is a blue blood conversation is less relevant in the modern era than it used to be.
I think that's right.
Because there was a time where, okay, if we're really talking about, and again, we're working on a project where we've been dealing with this kind of discussion a lot. Texas was doing its thing and Alabama was doing its thing and Michigan and Ohio State and Notre Dame and Penn State and Florida State and Washington. Like everybody was kind of doing their own thing and they did it pretty consistently. And there were 25-year coaches who were there doing it for a very long time. And you kind of knew. I think that's changed a little bit because what do we even do with the fact that Alabama fell off for a decade before Nick Saban revived them? What do we do with the fact that at the end of Mac Brown and until the last 2 years, Texas kind of didn't matter? What do we do with the fact that USC has a long history, multiple titles in the recent era, but is nowhere close to a blue blood right now because they hired a super famous coach who doesn't seem like he's a fit in Southern California? Like, what do we do with those kind of programs when Mike Shula was the coach at Alabama? Would you still have said, oh yeah, Bama's a blue blood? Or would you have looked at, well, I don't know, they've been 8-4 and 5-7 a lot lately. I don't know if they are. So I think it's also a less relevant It's interesting, but I think it's less applicable year to year to who's going to be good.
Yeah, and you could do it with like Georgia, from 1980 to 2022, right? Between national championships, and Ohio State went between 1970 and
68/70. Yeah.
Yeah. So yes, because you can paint yourself into a corner if you want to be like super rigid with national championship parameters for a blue blood. So I guess I would push back against that. But I do think you're right that it feels less relevant. Because we put rosters together differently. The way we determine a championship is vastly different from what we've done for the majority of the existence of college football. So I think that will create more upward mobility, but also probably would lead us to maybe define a little differently what a blue blood actually is, because I think how you would answer that question 30 years ago and 30 years from now are very different.
Now, on the other hand, so part of me is thinking, you know what? I think the modern era provides opportunity for non-blue bloods. And the final question from Darren was, will a non-blue blood ever win again? A national title again? And my first instinct was yeah, of course. But then when you think about how much NIL resources matter now, and that it's going to be in-house and that you can pay people above board, and that's going to lean into the resources, passion, tradition, or the people in your state and in your fan base. Is the fan base large enough? Is it accustomed enough to supporting the program that they can, now there's a financial component to that's above board. If you think about the 8 biggest national title contenders going into this season, maybe, and that roughly Texas, Georgia, Alabama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Ohio State, Penn State, Oregon. We had the Oregon conversation, but otherwise kind of modern blue bloods. And if we're thinking about an area where the SEC and the Big Ten are trying to pull away from the rest of the sport, are we actually getting more blue bloody? I don't know. It's a complicated conversation. And I think some of it gets back to definitionally, what is a blue blood to you?
Right. I mean, if you go through I'm looking at the championship odds now: Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, Oregon, Penn State, Alabama, Notre Dame, Clemson, LSU. Ole Miss is kind of the first one you sort of cock your head at.
Yeah.
And that's pretty far down the list. But then it's back to Miami and Tennessee and Michigan and Florida and Oklahoma. And then So, I mean, I think it could happen. Yeah. I still think you could see it happen. Is it less likely? Perhaps. I do, because the thing that's funny about playoff inclusivity is more teams have a shot to win the national title. And it actually might just be that the best teams just have mulligans. And once the playoff starts, it's great that those teams have more access to the playoff. I don't know that they actually have more access to winning the national title, because all you're doing is giving really good teams a chance to reset.
Well, and it's a completely separate conversation, because you're right that before one upset loss in October could knock the most talented team in the country out of the national title race. And now they're just going to be a 7 seed or a 9 seed instead and be fine, as we saw last year with Ohio State. Whereas if you just get hot in the regular season and the ball bounces your way and you play one awesome game and now you're one of the top 4, and now you only have to win 2 games and you have a chance. So, I think resources are going to matter more than ever. In a lot of ways, they've always mattered. But now that there's going to be direct payment, that your fan base's passion and dedication can lead directly to your team's payroll increasing.
And so, just sheer size too, right?
Sheer size, which a lot of that is, it's harder to be a blue blood if your student body is 7,500 instead of 75,000. So,
which puts Clemson in an interesting position, because Clemson's a pretty small school, right?
Right.
So is Notre Dame, but Notre Dame's an outlier.
So again, and to have a discussion, is Clemson a modern day blue blood, is mostly a semantic discussion. We all know what Clemson is. Dabo Swinney established a great program. They've won fairly consistently at the highest level. They had a little dip, but it seems like they've got their feet under them again, and they are in the preseason national title mix. So then what is that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Is Clemson the same as Alabama and Ohio State? No. But just because Clemson wasn't as good as Ohio State and Alabama in the 60s, does that mean anything today? How much? It means something, but how much does it mean? Okay.
Yeah.
That's it. Thanks for being here. Back to your picnics. This is to Doug and the ball knower.
Who's that?
I don't know. Sometimes when it's like, I understand, I know, but does that mean that I'm not a ball knower? And now we're back into semantics. So, for instance, if you would think Doug doesn't know ball, so then he's not a ball knower, then those are the semantics of that. Buckeye in Seattle here. This is Sam. Wouldn't it make sense for each conference to have the 4 best teams play a 2-weekend tournament to crown a champ and take the bid process almost completely out of the committee's hands? They're talking about the idea of conferences sort of determining, okay, like if these are our 4 teams, these are our 2 teams, right? That we want to have our own little tournament and we'll do that. It actually is Dusty Bottoms, not Sam. I jumped ahead on the questions. That's from Dusty Bottoms. Why haven't we already started doing this or heard it talked about? So it is being talked about in a way and is kind of going to happen. And actually, this is a version of what auto bids, if we get to a point where the Big Ten and the SEC each are guaranteed 4 spots and the ACC and the Big 12 are each guaranteed 2 spots. I don't think it's a huge step from there to the playoff system saying, okay, now you as a conference decide who your teams are. We're not even, the idea that the Big Ten, you have 4 guaranteed teams. Well, then who's going to pick them? This room full of 13 people or the conference itself, where you are going to create a structure? I mean, now we're back into a situation where do you go back to divisions? Do you do something like this? Because the idea, and we talked about the 3-6 and the 4-5. So now we want to go back to dividing teams up and then playing them off against each other at the end of the year. That's divisions. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's all sort divisions of are. And you could, I think you could change divisions year to year, but if you had 2 9-team divisions in the Big Ten and you played the 8 other teams in your division and 1 other team across, and that's your conference schedule, and then you got down to 1 versus 1 plays for the crown, and then the 2 3s play each other opposite, and the winners of those games get the 3rd and 4th playoff spots. God, that sounds great. Anyway, we're actually I think creeping toward this, but Dusty Bottoms, I think the point is they like that. And I actually think, again, I think this would be fine, which is why I don't quite understand when people get so mad about guaranteed number of bids for conferences.
Well, I think the thing that seems people are afraid of, when they say it's just going to turn back into an invitational kind of thing is not playing it off. You just leave it up to the conferences and they just sort of handpick the 4 teams without deciding anything really on the field. Right. So I get that trepidation. I do like the idea that's posed here because I'm still not 100% okay, I guess, with a scenario where the 6th place team in a conference gets to play the 3rd place team in a conference for 1 playoff spot. And then when the NBA does the play-in tournament, doesn't the higher seed team, if it loses its first game, get redemption and try to come back and win again, right? I would hate to see a team that's 3rd in the conference get screwed over. So if you make it a 2-week ordeal, now you're cutting into the regular season, I suppose. But you could also too, if you wanted to do that, you could just park some time at the end of the season for the rest of your league to play that weekend too. They're just playing games for bowl eligibility or whatever, right? So that idea was actually Big Ten Media Days, I think 2 years ago. There were some people talking about doing something like that on championship weekend. I think they did it in 2020, right? When the COVID year,
COVID stuff,
So the giving teams opportunities to play games that would maybe boost them into the 12-team playoff, even if they weren't in the Big Ten championship game. And at the time, I thought it was kind of weird, but now it actually makes sense to me. So I would be more in favor of a true playoff that had true in conference playoff that had multiple rounds to it to determine who goes to the big national playoff, because I don't think it's right that the 3rd place team in a conference is in a do or die situation against the 6th place team in a conference in some situations.
Yeah. But it's in the ether, right? I mean, it's out there.
Yeah, for sure.
It's not fanciful to think that we could get there. And again, I just think if we get there, I don't think that's terrible, because one of the things is, I think a lot of people want the conference races to matter and the conference games to matter. And as much as you're creating a scenario where the 6th place team in a conference has a chance to get in, but now the difference between being 6th in the conference and 10th in the conference is such a huge deal. And this is a mid-October game between Iowa and Michigan State has incredible implications in the race to be the 5 or 6 seed in the Big Ten, which means you get to play a play-in playoff game. Again, it's opportunity versus guarantee. Now you're like, if we're going to be in the top 6, what do we even care? But they're still seeding. I mean, they're good and bad to all this stuff, and it really is just what you value a little bit. But sometimes you hear the reaction to the 4 guaranteed bids for the Big Ten and the SEC, and people just have a gut negative reaction to that. And there's definitely some upside to it, right?
Yeah,
I'm not saying it's all upside, but it's not all downside.
It's not all downside, and as we've laid out a couple times, like it's likely to happen that way anyway. So I'm not getting bent out of shape about it being automatic or not. When it's most years, those conferences will have at least 4 teams in.
So our guy Turbo Husker just listened to your latest podcast comparing Washington and Nebraska. My initial reaction to your choice of Washington was that you guys are a bunch of insert expletive here honks. Mm-hmm. After a few minutes of reflection, I completely understand why you chose as you did. The Huskers have been wildly inconsistent at best and just plain bad in many cases for several years. I've been saying for years that the Huskers will go as far as their offensive line takes them with the returning starters and the addition of Rocco Spindler and Elijah Pritchett, who we talked about a lot. I believe they will be much improved. I believe that you will look back on this and wish you had chosen differently. You guys do a great job. Thank you for helping me embrace my natural hatred of the South.
I was going to say natural hatred of you two.
of you blanking honks. It's just hard. It's hard to totally believe in Nebraska, right? Not to relitigate our 46-minute discussion on that. You can see it. It's hard to totally believe it based on the last decade.
Yeah, but I think it's a good point to say they'll go as far as the O-line goes. That's certainly that speaks to my heart. I think that's true. And if the O-line for Nebraska is good, then I think you'll be right that we probably will look back and look a little silly. But yeah, it's just they're a difficult team to really wrap your arms around. But I don't say that and think to myself that they don't have a chance. I think they have a chance. I think Matt Rule's done a nice job with that roster. I just I need to see it before I predict it, I guess, with that particular program.
The whole Matt Rule 40 teams in the playoff joke. Any comment on that?
I'm good.
Reaction? I'm good. Yeah, I'm good too. Yeah, he was just joking around. Okay. Mississippi State, Maryland as our showdown. Hello, dingbats. Doug and Bill picked Maryland over Mississippi State due to the, quote, richer recent history of Maryland. It was a few podcasts ago, but I am old enough to remember back in 2022 when Doug actually was a believer in the Bulldogs due to Doug's faith in Mike Leach. Jeff Lebby went 2-10 this year, but in my view, when Mississippi State is discussed, the fact that they were on the rise until the tragic passing of Mike Leach should be part of the conversation. There is no replacing Mike Leach, but Mississippi State has shown that with a great coach, they can get over the top and would be in contention for a 12 or 16 team playoff. Jeff Lebby should be sealed in an abandoned mine shaft. But other than that, but Mississippi State has the culture, money, and recruiting base to be a contender. Maryland isn't fit to clean my shoes. Best, Sam. So
yeah,
the showdown. The showdown is about this year, but we did reference some history in the discussion about this year. Last 4 years, Maryland 27-24. Last 4 years, Mississippi State 23-27. Appearances in the final AP poll top 25 in the last 20 years. Mississippi State 4, Maryland 1. Maryland has been pretty darn competitive against teams that aren't at the top tier of the Big Ten. For the previous 3 years, they had a down year last year. Mississippi State is in, obviously, as Sam stated, with the passing of a great coach and just a tragic situation, in complete flux right now. So I know they got Jackson Arnold in there, and I know they had a run with Dan Mullen in there. But I understand what you're saying, but I still think it's pretty close, actually. And I think they are both in similar positions in their conference. And the brief spike, I went back to Jackie Sherrill, right? The last 20 years is post Jackie Sherrill at Mississippi State. Talk about a guy who left the North. So if we went too far saying Maryland has a better recent history, I think this is too far trying to act like Mississippi State has a much better recent history. I actually think it's a pretty even comparison. And based on this year, I mean, I did pick Jackson Arnold to win the Heisman last year, and now he's Mississippi State's quarterback, right? So, I mean, maybe that should affect. He's at Auburn. Who's at Mississippi State?
Was it Blake Shapen?
Oh, yeah, I'm out. Oh, Blake Shapen? Oh, no, wait. I got confused. I apologize. Mississippi State's going like 1-11. So anyway, I disagree.
Yeah, Blake Shapen. They got Luke Cromanhook from Florida State too.
Everything's fine. They're great. I apologize.
I mean, Maryland, like to be fair, Maryland has not elevated in the way that Mississippi State has elevated at times over the last 15 years.
In 2014, I agree.
I mean, but Mississippi State also has won 9 and 10 games.
I agree. So now, okay.
I actually think it's fair. I think it's a fair criticism. I think maybe we brushed past that one a little too quickly, and it's a fair criticism because Maryland is like because Maryland's gone 8-5 twice since Mike Losley's been there, and has won 8 games twice since 2010. Like, come on. I think the email's correct. I think we were wrong.
Okay, we'll go back. We'll do a note. We'll do a show. A Mississippi State Maryland show in June. It's a fair criticism. I don't know that I would. I'm not saying that I would pick Mississippi State though. You sounds like you would maybe pick Mississippi State.
No, I think like
it's a fair criticism.
This year conversation. I don't. Yeah, I think the end result of saying we'd rather be Maryland this year is not totally off base. But to say that Maryland has a better recent history, I think is factually incorrect.
Yeah. Okay. This is Buckhorn Creek, which I think is a golf course. Watching you two pick who would you rather be, when you picked Penn State over Texas, I laughed out loud. And then not taking Tennessee or A&M, I quit watching after that. It's like watching a Globetrotters game. Wonder who is going to win. You'd have to be a moron to pick James Franklin to win anything more than his normal 10 games until he gets the monkey off his back. He may do it.
People said the same thing about Steve Sarkisian before he did.
He may do it, but until he does, you were just stupid for having any confidence in him. And there's 10 years of history that says he can't do it. So that is the point there. And I went through, actually don't have it in front of me. I thought I added it to the notes here. James Franklin's record against the top 25 and the top 10 is terrible. It's mostly losses. It's a lot of it is losses to Ohio State and Michigan. Mm-hmm. Texas, since Sark has been there, is I think 500 against top 25 teams, and they're 1-1 against Bama. They lost to Georgia twice last year. There's some similarities there, actually, of they're very good. They have good records in recent years, but they don't beat the best teams in their conferences. And we understand the James Franklin discussion. People are just going to disagree on the James Franklin discussion. If you're in the, I think he stinks until he does it, versus the, we understand he hasn't done it, but that doesn't mean they can't do it this year. My main point is, I don't think the discussion around Texas is that different. And by the way, while James Franklin was winning 10 games a year for a decade, Texas was in a hole for a while there, and they're just digging out of that. So to now think that Sark, with a magic wand, has magically made Texas, because they almost lost to Arizona State in a playoff game last year, like, where is this? Oh my God, Texas is awesome. That we understand the Penn State conversation. I'm not sure where the Texas is a level above Penn State. That idea, I think that's wrong.
Texas is not the school that I would use to make that argument as definitively as it was made. Yeah.
Yeah.
In comparison to Penn State. Yeah.
Yeah. It's just like very similar. And again, like this is back to the thing, the idea that like, oh, I can't believe like Texas A&M and Tennessee, that's honkitude. That's making assumptions about Tennessee and Texas A&M that we laid out factually are not there. It's SEC.
Who did we compare Tennessee to?
Northwestern. I can't. I can't remember specifically, but like this is the whole point. This is the whole point. That people watch that show and are like, "Oh, Texas and Tennessee and Texas A&M are awesome. I can't believe you think Penn State's going to be good." Honkitude.
Oh, Tennessee was Indiana. Yeah.
Honk. It's honkitude. There's no factual basis for your opinion on that. Like, I'm just telling you. because we laid out the facts. We understand what the facts are about Penn State. But assumptions, SEC assumptions, are where arguments go to die. And that's actually, I like when people make them, because then I can get out my sword and win. Because it's just, you think there is, what is there? Texas A&M, for real. Name one thing you are basing that on. There's nothing there. It's a mirage, man. It's an absolute mirage. Okay.
Yeah. Also, if they stopped listening after that segment, they still listen to most of the show. So thank you for that.
No, that was good.
Yeah,
but we appreciate, we want the dialogue. We want the dialogue.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. We want the dialogue. We want the dialogue.
And if we're on the wrong side of history, please feel free to throw that back in our face when it happens too.
Mississippi State history. Bill's shoving me out in traffic and being like, I'm on the right side of it on this Mississippi State Maryland battle
over here somewhere. Yeah.
All right, let's have a little bit of a conversation about the Ohio State noon game thing. Where are you on big games at noon, big games in prime time generally? I did 30 minutes on it. You weren't here. Let's get your opinion quick.
Yeah. I think a team like Ohio State should have more marquee home night games than it has had since Fox took over the broadcasting rights for the Big Ten. I do think, as someone who's covered a lot of games in Ohio Stadium, I don't know that I've gone to these big noon games, certainly against Michigan, but even against Penn State, and there's probably the two biggest examples, where I felt like the atmosphere was bad. I still think I think a big game still more or less brings out the best of Ohio State's crowd, regardless of what time it is. But I was there for the Notre Dame game that opened the 2022 season. That was a night, that was a scene. LeBron was there. You invite opportunities for those kind of things. The all day anticipation of it certainly ratchets things up a lot. So I am on the side of it would be nice if we could play Ohio State Texas at night, and if we're not doing that, can we play Ohio State Penn State at night to at least balance it out? I don't like that Fox has sort of held hostage the biggest games, particularly on Ohio State's schedule, and put them at noon when I think frankly it could be a better TV show and better for the fans if they were play more of them at night. So I don't think that every game has to be at night, but I would welcome more night games, or at least a marquee night game for Ohio State, because they have not had a lot of them over the last 5 or 6 years.
So Jordan and Ben sent two similar emails that basically, as Ohio State fans, boiled down to, I like getting it over with because when it's at night, I'm too nervous all day.
Yeah, for sure.
Jordan said, I prefer to sit down with my Jack and Coke and whatever I'm eating and watch Ohio State dominate at noon and then enjoy the rest of the day knowing my team won and all the other games I'm watching are just for fun. Also, for being honest, the night game atmosphere means nothing through the TV. And then Ben says, I prefer noon games because I spend the whole day worrying about the game otherwise. I like to get it done so I can enjoy the other games. But I do think that night games can play a part in your team's success. So those were two just sort of there's a lot of how it fits into your life that came through in a lot of the emails that we got. There's one thing, very loyal listener and viewer and correspondent over the years, Steven, sent some messages on Twitter. I didn't spend a lot of time on this in my discussion of it because in the NIL world, I question how big of a factor it is anymore. Do you think it matters a lot for recruiting? I understand the logistics that have been pointed out, that when it's a noon game and you have a Friday night high school game, it's harder for that player to physically get to the stadium for a noon game. If it's a big game, if you're Ohio State and you say, hey, we want you to be here for Texas, we want you to be here for Penn State. But I just wonder, do visits and being in the stadium, is a school like Ohio State losing recruits because they do not have the opportunity to soak in a night game atmosphere at the school they might pick?
I mean, I couldn't give you a concrete example of that. I've always thought that was a bit of a straw man, and even more so now in the NIL world. I get it. You want to be able, it stinks when 5-star player X you think is coming to your school, and then it turns out you're playing at noon, so he's going to go to Alabama, Georgia instead because he's closer to there and it's at night and it fits a schedule better. I understand that sucks. I don't think that's where recruitments are won and lost anymore. I don't really know that they were ever won and lost in those areas. And I think if you polled every single FBS head coach and gave them the condition of anonymity, they would probably rather play at noon to get it over with too, and not have their players sitting around in the hotel all day, and not have anyone come visit on game day because they don't have any time to talk to them anyway. So I actually don't think that is that big of a deal. No, maybe I'm naive, but I don't think that has a major impact.
I previously, pre-NIL, and not that there wasn't money exchanging hands in recruiting, obviously, but I think there was more room for magic in recruiting. You're there, you have a good group of recruits there, they're shooting off fireworks, there's an exciting game, and you're a 17, 18-year-old kid who gets a feeling in your body that says, I want to be part of this. And now, even if you are there at night and you get that feeling, you might in the moment still feel, I want to be part of this. And then the game ends and you go back inside and you're like, I'm getting offered 85 grand from Tennessee. Can you match the NIL? So I think the magic, there was always magic and money in recruiting, right? There always was. But I think there used to be more room for magic. And now I don't know. At the highest level, are we not talking maybe 80-20 money magic, where maybe in the past there could have been situations where sometimes money was going to win out, but it might have been more 50-50. And for some kids, it might have been more 80-20 the other way.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I also think it's maybe more of a difference maker for teams that might have like really unique home environments. Or even like a place like Ohio State, like I just like the everything Ohio State has to offer, I think maybe like rises above. It was fun to be there for a night game kind of thing. Like I think it could be more important for some programs than it would be for a program like Ohio State.
Yeah. Lucas I did a lot of like percentages that Ohio State the last 6 years actually is the same percentage of night games. And Lucas is saying percentages is not the right way to go about it. Yes, by percentage, Ohio State really hasn't lost primetime games. They've just lost a 3:30 window, but that percentage is propped up by the stupid primetime games like Western Michigan, bad Michigan State, Rutgers, and Akron, all within the last few years. And this is the part that can be, again, a very difficult conversation. If the opponent's not good, then a lot of people view a night game as stupid. But if the opponent's awesome, then some people view a night game as necessary. And that is something that I think does not as much apply to any other sport. And then if you are thinking about it and saying, well, this game has to be here and this game has to be here, then you're setting yourself up for disappointment because the TV network's just going to want to make money and they don't care about what your perfect 12-game schedule would be. So I think absolutely Lucas is right, but that makes it even more difficult when not only is it, hey, I want primetime games, but I want these primetime games, and the ones that you give me, I don't want those.
I think like the secret in all this is that people are going to watch their team no matter what time they play, right? So like it's not like that the noon window has been very good for Fox. It did feel to me at the advent of like the Fox Big Ten partnership that Fox was attempting to like recalibrate how people viewed college football Saturdays. And I don't think that's happened. Because I think the thing that maybe is most frustrating for Ohio State fans in particular is like you're going to watch the Buckeyes play, a high school team at noon if that's when they're playing, and like the stakes aren't any different and the game happens, but then the rest of the college football Saturday happens and like the SEC is on ABC at night, and like that is still like the game, that's still the time slot, and that like I don't think people's views on it have changed like that, and Fox I don't know if it was just a fool's errand to begin with, but I don't think they've successfully made people think about college football differently. So like I totally get if part of the pushback against this is just like you want your game to feel special when it's a huge game, and it's really hard for it to feel special if it's played at noon while half the country is still asleep.
That is a very good point. Fox has not succeeded in that, and that's on them. That there still is a perk, and that's part of what I wanted to get here. We didn't get a million emails on that. But in your mind as a college football fan, is night cool and noon is lame? And I think there's still kind of a little bit of that view, and then that's a failure by Fox. And maybe it means that it can't be overcome, but that's not where they wanted to be 6 years into this. This is from a Nebraska fan of the Central Time Zone, just saying that like noon games are tough for other time zones. If you live out west, you're watching the big game at 9 a.m. So like that's a reality, especially now that the Big Ten reaches to the Pacific time zone, and it's like, hey, Ohio State, Texas, this is Big Ten versus SEC. And by the way, wake up USC and Oregon and UCLA and Washington fans and root for the Big Ten while you're eating your eggs. That's a reality. And then the atmosphere, the point, like a night game atmosphere, is it a better home field advantage? That you have a better chance of winning. And there's been a report out now that Ohio State would have liked to move this Texas game to Sunday night instead of Saturday night in that Fox window. And maybe Texas might have said no to that. And that would feel like maybe, hey, no, we don't want to play you at night. I've had many conversations over the years about Ohio State's home field advantage, which I think is not nearly as great as some other stadiums. Do you think playing at night gives the home team a significantly bigger home field advantage?
Some teams, I don't know that it gives Ohio State a significantly bigger one. Like I think well, it's funny. I was going to say I think it gives Penn State one, but Penn State's record in whiteout games is actually bad because Ohio State usually beats them.
Yeah, they play good teams. Yeah.
In the whiteout games. But no, I think like Baton Rouge, like Death Valley at night, I think is a thing, right?
Yeah.
So a slight one. Like I don't want to pretend like I've actually never seen a study. I would like to see one. Like what's the decibel level in Ohio Stadium for a noon game compared to a night game? I don't view it as giving Ohio State like a tremendous home field advantage either way, but I think for some teams it does.
Joe in Charlotte, guys, love the show. As an Ohio State fan, what frustrates me the most about the whole big noon kickoff isn't the time slot, it's the consistent nature of it all, right? That I think is a very good point. That's just that it has happened so much. It was 5 times out of 14 last year. The big noon was an Ohio State home game. It's the breaking point. And some of the emails have sort of used that point, that it's a breaking point. So that's well said by Joe in Charlotte. Andrew did a lot of research on this. His conclusion, Ohio State's gotten the short end of the stick. Again, that they're leaning on Ohio State so much. The idea that it's big noon in the heat, Jason is saying that now not only as I go Ohio State, Texas, it's in August. It's going to be hot, whereas it might be a better atmosphere at night. That also is a reality. 2016 Ohio State grad, mad that there's so many noon games. That's Troy. We get that. I think the biggest thing that Fox is missing is that night games just have more juice. A tailgating conversation from Liam, right? That like that's part of it. You want to go hang out with your friends before a big game. And now if you want to do that and have a good tailgate for a noon game, you have to start your tailgate at like 7 a.m. Yeah. So that is a reality. I think that is also part of this. And then Michael made the point that actually TV viewers like the night vibes too. Great show as always, but I think you're completely wrong about noon versus night being an issue for people who go in person, but not so much for people who watch on TV. I'm in a group chat with 4 of my friends from Ohio State. None of us live in Columbus and 2 of us live out of state. So we don't go to many games in person, yet all of us are very frustrated by big Ohio State games always being at noon. I don't think we're alone. What you're missing is that the night game atmosphere doesn't just matter for people who are there. It also matters for TV viewers. So there are some, we had an earlier one that said like, it doesn't matter. But then like that idea, and I can like, you can have a party, right? And you can get jacked up when they're shooting off the fireworks, but also like ESPN, ABC, when they have those night games, and like CBS has had night games over the years, like Fox never has night games. I don't know if ABC does a great job yet. They're still, I think, kind of feeling their way a little bit, but I think
CBS does a really good job with it. CBS, like their presentation is very good.
So you can get those vibes. You can get those vibes a little bit. All right. I can't get to all of them. A lot of frustration in the end. Jay in Philadelphia, we hear you. Chris K, we hear you. Dalton, we hear you. And a lot of it is just that it's so much. It was too much in the end. Yeah. Like that's where the frustration, that they understand why it happened, but it was last year was really overwhelming. And it was too much. All right. Let's do a little bit on improving the show. Andrew, like the watch along last year when we had a watch along day for, what was it? Was it Oregon, Penn Michigan, State, and Ohio State, Penn State?
Penn State, Ohio State at noon, and then Oregon, Michigan was a 3:30 game. Yeah.
Open to a watch along this year, perhaps during the season?
Yeah. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Also, Andrew says, my favorite part of the show is Whatcha, if that could be expanded. I have teased an all Whatcha Wednesday in the offseason to you, and you said, I'm not sure people want to watch us talk about frozen pizza and action movies for 90 minutes. Andrew is kind of indicating that some people would.
Right. It's at least one viewer. Maybe that's where it makes it worth doing. All right.
Yeah. This is also one from Buckhorn, who was mad about the Tennessee stuff. I think you're all good analysts. I'm an Ohio State fan and listen often when you talk about them. I also like to hear about the teams that the Bucs will or might play. So I listen to you when you talk about those teams as well. I do wish you would find a way to talk about the top 25 or teams that are at least relevant in the big picture of college football. I can't see for the life of me why you think there is any connection between the fan bases of these 28 teams that unifies them in any way. I can see what unifies Big Ten fans and SEC fans and so forth, but what do Syracuse fans and Purdue fans have in common? Why do you think Utah fans give a crap about West Virginia? Do you think BYU fans are telling their friends they need to hurry up and get home because the Northwestern game is getting ready to start? And that's one of the KOTN 28, and they are dying to watch them because they are one of their fellow Northern teams. Seems crazy to me that you waste your talent on teams that such a small number of people care about. Find a way to get in the game and analyze the teams that people care about the most. The top 25 would be a good place to start.
I think we do. Yeah, I mean, we talk about the Northern top 25 teams the most of any teams we talk about. I guess like we'll talk more about like Georgia and Clemson and Texas, and then I guess we can do that. We've talked about that before. Like, do we need to get out of our Northern bubble a little bit more sometimes and talk about college football at large and the most important teams? I think that's a fair criticism. And no, my expectation is not necessarily that Utah fans are rushing home to make sure they can watch the Northwestern game. I think maybe I don't know. It's important to me, and I think it's important to you that there's a space for those teams to get talked about even a little bit, because they're not talked about really anywhere else in college football media. So, I don't think we're going to do an hour-long show on Northwestern, but we'll give them 5 minutes when no one else does.
I think there's a couple things. I think 28 is a good number to get a handle on. I think trying to have a handle on the Power 68 is difficult, and to try to just have a handle on the 20 best teams in the country, there are people doing that show. There are a lot of people doing that show. So we thought there was a niche here. We go back and forth. Like, this show should be two things, and I think maybe it leans into one, the other more than both sometimes. One is it's a show about Northern college football, but other it's a show about college football from a Northern view. So it's always from a Northern view because that's where we are and people know where we stand. And I can't, I don't think I can wave a sword and put on my Georgia hat and then the next segment be like, man, I got to tell you, I just think Tennessee, Georgia, Texas A&M are all going to the semis, right? I mean, like, we know where it stands here, but that we're coming from a Northern viewpoint and then trying to talk about Georgia. Here's the thing, though. I just think a lot of times, at least for me, the country better than I do. I just don't think my Georgia, Tennessee, Texas A&M down and dirty ball conversation is going to be as good, because it's not what I focus on. And I don't know that I want to take the time to say, well, I made sure that I watched LSU, Texas A&M from gun to gun. But when I was trying to watch Kansas State, BYU, and Pitt, Syracuse, and Minnesota, Iowa, and I'd rather spend my time doing those other things because I feel like there aren't other shows doing that.
Yeah, I think a lot of, and like, it's hard. It's a lot of college football shows suffer a little bit from trying to know everything about everyone, and then you end up like not knowing as much as you should when you're trying to have you and I just like having deeper conversations. So then we sort of narrow the pool of teams we talk about because if we tried to do that with 68 teams, we would not be able to have those conversations.
And I do think for still, we talk about a lot, put on a hoodie, chill in the air, weather works against you in recruiting, all the things that we've talked about that we do think those things do unite our Northern teams. The number one thing that unites our Northern teams is being anti-SEC bias. So I think that's the main thing, is that whether you're an Iowa State fan or a West Virginia fan or an Ohio State fan or an Oregon fan or a Michigan fan or a Minnesota fan or a Syracuse fan, sometimes you get sick of everybody puffing up the SEC. And that, I think, can unite us. And that, again, unfortunately, in a lot of ways in this country, the number one thing that unites people in America right now is being against something else. So I can bemoan it, but also we can also acknowledge it. So what does a BYU fan and a Northwestern fan have in common? They both want the South to cram it. That, I think, either is true or certainly can be true. We can help make that true. Yes? That is unifying, isn't it?
I think it can be. Yeah.
Max suggests that we do a power ranking of all our teams every week, all 28, and in season it could be substance, and off season it could be silly, like Ohio State got bumped down in the rankings because they got stuck on Big Noon again, right? So that could be, I like a funny little like top 28. I think could be really fun. This is Christopher. I grew up in the Columbus suburbs, attended Ohio State in the early 80s. I was a Boy Scout ushering at the Buckeye games. My first game was Archie Griffin's freshman year. I've been a Buckeye for 50 years. I'm taking you up on providing feedback. Your shows are too long. Our show's too long. Sometimes, do you think they're too long? Yeah. We get in trouble because we like to dive in. 2, you're an adult. Act like one. I'm glad to see that Doug is starting to act his age. I lose interest when you act childish. Do I act child? This is 7 things that rip me, and I think you're going to sit there with your arms crossed and go, fair, for 7 things in a row.
I don't know that you would act say you'd act
I think I do sometimes. It just depends if you like it or not. 3, let Bill have his say. Don't overdo it and dominate the show.
I feel very empowered to give my opinions on things.
Fair. I don't understand this one. Keep it fresh and interesting with guests. The more you engage guests, the more interesting and engaging the show is. This has been a thing for us when we're doing this KOTN showdowns. The original idea to me was get beat writers from each team, and then we moderate the showdown and we decide. But the hard thing sometimes about our show is sort of explaining our show to guests. Now, if they have an expertise, like we had Adam Rittenberg on, ESPN does a list of how to win the offseason. We talk about winning the offseason. But if we're doing more of a KOTN kind of thing, I just think it's better if it's us. But also, to me, it's a thing back and forth. When I listen to podcasts, sometimes I just think I like these people, and I want to hear the main people talk. And that pulls me away from guests sometimes. I also think guests can be great. We're in a run of not having a million guests right now. What's your view on guests?
Yeah, I go back and forth on them. I don't know what the right answer is. I think I agree with the idea that like introducing a new voice, new face every now and then does keep things fresh. We hardly do it at all, which probably means we could do it a little more. But I also think that I also think guests can become a crutch for shows too. It's like, we didn't think of anything for the show. Let's just have somebody else on and ask them a bunch of questions. Like, I don't want to fall into that rut either.
Yes. So we would take specific feedback, askkotn@gmail.com on guests. How often do you want guests? What type of guests do you like? Certainly, we enjoy having coaches and players on. I think you can have very interesting conversations with beat writers of other teams. You can have debates with other national people, and we want to be open to that. But it's also, especially the offseason, when we're only doing 2 shows, even though it's the off season, there's always 2 shows worth of stuff that we want to say. And then it's like, oh, well, now we have somebody else. And it's like, well, when are we going to say what we want to say? It can be very difficult. So, but again, I have to check myself sometimes on my tendency. I listen to shows that I watch and listen to. It's because I like the topic, but I like the main people who discuss that topic. And sometimes when those shows have guests on, I don't listen to them. Because I'm like, well, now this is not the show anymore. This is not just the two or three people that I like chopping it up. So that pushes me away from it. But I want to reflect this. I want this show to reflect what the audience wants, Bill. And I think you believe that we certainly could lean more guests, and I probably need to be more open to that.
Yeah, but I would very much welcome feedback on types of guests, because I don't know if people prefer coaches, players, media members, whatever. We've also talked about we've never really done it, but like famous fans, right? Of teams. Like, I think we maybe can lean into that a little more too. Yeah,
no, that was the original idea of like the most famous fan we can get from each program, and we track that. And it's like, we got Ashton Kutcher, Iowa, you're in great shape. We got John Legend, Ohio State, you're in great shape. We got Derek Jeter, Michigan, you're in great shape, right? Like we got the guy. I got a picture with him at the national championship game in 2014. The dad from Modern Family, Ty Burrell, Oregon fan. I've told the story many times. We're in the hallway. I'm a huge Modern Family fan. We walk past him. It's me and Ari and Ty Burrell. I say, Ty, can I get a photo? Ari is like holding the camera sideways and takes like my cell phone, takes like 3 of them. And then he starts to twist the camera to make it vertical. And Ty Burrell is like, okay. And he was like, I'll do horizontal. I'm not giving you a horizontal and vertical. My team's about to play for the national championship. But he was very nice. I'll show it on the next show. All right. That's where we are. We'll be back on Wednesday with a normal show. We just wanted to give you a light 30 minutes of content here. Bill, did we manage to do that? Just a light 30 minutes, just a brush.
Yep.
Just 30. Thanks as always to our producer, Mike Urostowski. We will see you guys on Monday. On Wednesday. You're consuming this maybe on Monday. We hope you had a great weekend. And also, it has not happened yet because we recorded this early, but it will have happened by the time you watch this on Monday. My younger daughter graduated high school. She graduated on Saturday. So congratulations to my daughter for knocking that out, and congratulations to me and my wife for getting another kid through. For now, thanks to you guys for being here. He's Bill Landis. I'm Doug Lesmerises, and that was Kings of the North.